it right out of the way right now before we get into this movie. I cannot imagine what the filmmakers had to deal with and actually accomplish by making it, and it's a miracle that it's even coming out, so I'm glad we're here to talk about it, and I'm really excited that we get to talk about Black Panther Wakanda Forever. The first movie was so special, and this is one of those films that we had to see and how they were going to do it, and I was quite enamored, so let's get into it. Black Panther Wakanda Forever is obviously the sequel to the first Black Panther film, and is also a new entry in this massive MCU franchise that we have going on right now, and this is definitely the movie that most eyes were on in this phase. Obviously, we all know the untimely, tragic death of Chadwick Boseman. It broke a lot of hearts. I mean, this guy did so much. He was so dedicated to all of his work, and he was so dedicated to the characters he created and brought on screen for us. And that was just such a hard hit, and it was so out of nowhere. How as a director, how as a storyteller, how do you honor Chadwick Boseman? How do you respect that legacy? And how do you tell a story that doesn't come across like the Disney factory machine? It doesn't come across like a studio trying to parade something around after it shouldn't be. And I'm so glad that I can say with full heart that Black Panther Wakanda Forever is a respectful, crafted film that really engrosses you and makes you feel the importance of the culture that is representing, and it also makes you feel the importance of the memory of Chadwick Boseman, while delivering a movie that is both satisfying emotionally for remembering Chadwick Boseman, but also satisfyingly emotional in terms of just character arcs and the story it's telling in this movie. All the character work, all of the acting, the performances across the board are fantastic. Starting with Letitia Wright as Shuri, this is the movie. This is the one where I was like, okay, if we're going to develop Shuri some more, I have to see an arc. I need to see something where I can be made to endear her as more than T'Challa's sister, who is an amazing character in the first movie, and I do love her, and I love her presence, and I love her and Chadwick Boseman, and I love their dynamic as siblings. She was the cool, smart character in the room that just had a lot of presence and a lot of energy around her that really just elevated and brought a youthful presence to the first Black Panther that really made that movie a lot of fun. So this is the one where she really has to step up. I really, really love Shuri in this movie, and her arc in general was just something I didn't expect to get from it. I knew she was going to have some sort of arc. I knew she was going to have more of a major role in this movie, of course, but I didn't know how they're going to go about it or how they're really going to execute it. I honestly kept my head out of the marketing of this one. This one in particular, I didn't want marketing and premature hype filling my head walking in. This is just a different thing than the other MCU movies, so they had a lot to deal with and develop, and I didn't want a bunch of trailer hype to give me expectations that I was thinking about in the film. I just wanted to receive what the film was giving to me, not trying to match it with expectations I had going in. But yeah, Shuri's arc in this movie, fantastic. What I love about her is she's able to step up her presence. Letitia Wright does such a good job at filling Shuri's character with so much regret. There's this feeling of loss within her, and of course, obviously we know why that is, but I like how the movie explored this, and what I love is a lot of that stuff is coming from her performance. The writing doesn't explicitly just tell you every little internal issue she's faced. It lets the audience kind of eventually get to the emotional steps that she gets to, follow that journey along with her, rather than feeling like you're an outsider watching her arc, because the film trusts Letitia Wright as a performer to deliver a lot of that pathos that is needed. And I appreciate that the film spends so much time engrossing you into that pathos. Speaking of pathos, let's talk about Namor. Dude, this guy, one of the best villains I've seen in the MCU, hands down. What I really love about him is he continues that legacy of what the first Black Panther did with Killmonger, and giving us a villain that doesn't feel like a villain. I don't think he's a villain, and I feel kind of wrong calling him a villain, because I don't think it's what he is. He is genuinely an antagonist, and that goes for a lot of this movie in general. He continues that legacy of Black Panther 1 with Killmonger by giving us an antagonist that is so sympathetic, yet you totally are intimidated by him. I like that this movie makes me feel weird for calling him a villain, because he's not. That isn't the case. I think this movie's above that. This film feels like it's just about characters dealing with their emotional issues. It might bother some people. Some people might want to go in expecting like just a big blockbuster action film. You do get that blockbuster action, and it is very satisfying when it goes down, and I will say the effects look great and it all looks really clean. Not like Marvel hasn't had any controversy when it comes to special effects and finishing and stuff like that. But again, further positives for this movie, the effects look fantastic. I was blown away by how finished they were. There are a lot of great moments that really shine. The hand-to-hand combat was matched well with visual special effects fighting. In terms of effects, nothing ever felt sloppily rushed together or tossed together. It all felt really refined. I'm getting ahead of myself here. There's a lot I loved about this movie. Angela Bassett returns as Ramonda, T'Challa's mother, Shuri's mother, and she is an absolute powerhouse. There are so many scenes. There's one particular moment where you get a straight monologue from her where she just goes off. Without spoilers, it is genuinely just, it broke my heart. I was crying in the theater, and it hit me where I lived, and I really loved seeing how much weight being a mother, but not just that, not just being a mother, but being royalty, being part of something where even though you've lost your kid, you have to step up to the plate and take on his responsibilities now. The way Angela Bassett brings to this character is so well realized. It's beautiful to see, and there are just so many standout moments of just acting alone. No action, no fighting, no choreography, no insane blockbuster CGI craziness, which is always fun when it happens, but just actors acting their asses off, and it's fantastic. And those are my favorite parts of the movie. The action is the byproduct, purely the byproduct of a very emotional and well told story here, in my opinion. There's a few things here and there in the plot that does make the runtime feel a bit padded, admittedly. Martin Freeman's character, I really didn't see much use for him here. It just kind of feels like he's there because he was in the first one, so they kind of felt contractually obligated to put him in this one. Any scene with Martin Freeman, I love him as an actor, and I love his character in the MCU dynamic. I just could have gone without him in this movie. He wasn't the focal point, and I never really cared for him. I get why he's there. I get what he's the embodiment of in this movie. Didn't need him in it. Man, we are still on the characters because there's a lot to talk about. Going back to characters I really loved in this movie, I got to talk about Dominic Thorne as Ironheart. This was the biggest surprise for me. Ironheart, I did not expect to love as much as I did. I knew she was in this movie. I didn't know how much of a pivotal role she was going to have in it. But man, I welcome her to the team. I welcome her to the Avengers world with open arms. Ironheart was a lot of fun. She has so many great interactions with Shuri and Okoye especially that just really made her stand out as a new addition. And it never felt like a studio note saying, hey, we need to build a new MCU character and bring them into this one. It felt totally natural with what she needed to do for this plot and the way she integrates ultimately into the final act. A bit messy, admittedly. I didn't really see, she ultimately becomes a suit to fight at the end with other characters. Could have used a little more there, but also I don't see where the movie could have done, what else the movie could have done with her in that moment. There were other things that were more important to focus on, and other arcs to finish up that were the main focal point of the movie. And she has a cool kind of parallel to Shuri and the way Shuri bonds with her. They're both very smart characters. I like seeing them build the dynamic off of that, and I thought it was really touching and it made for another element in this movie that really worked for me. Akerira as Okoye, she gets a lot more focus. She just absolutely crushes it as this character. I really love her performance in this one especially. In this movie, you really get that essence of what her conflict is with herself and kind of what that entails and what she feels like her role is in Wakanda. She has a fun side arc that I appreciated the movie putting in because it made me feel like I got to breathe with her a bit more. I loved getting insight into her mind, and I liked seeing the friction from her character and Ramonda's, and how that eventually develops into another plot thread in this movie that makes for some really interesting character friction. It was just really emotional, and there's a great heart-to-heart that these two characters have. It was really interesting seeing how Okoye's role adds to the friction between certain characters in the movie regarding Ramonda and Shuri, and I liked seeing that. It's fun because this movie takes time to develop its world out. For the most part, all these characters that I just mentioned are juggled very well in this story, and I appreciated how much time each one got. Even if the runtime did feel a little long at times, I appreciated the fact that it was still runtime being dedicated to character development and not runtime being dedicated to useless stuff, for the most part. Again, mentioned Martin Freeman. That was about it. That's where I say the pacing can be a little bit padded sometimes, and again, could have used a little bit of trim. But what also I do love about the runtime is that it allows us to just be immersed in this world. This film feels like it's building the world of Wakanda. It doesn't feel like a movie being thrown in to be an addition to the MCU universe around it. It feels like a movie made about Wakanda, about Wakandans, about their struggle after a terrible loss. The fact that this movie was able to focus up and stay focused on that was what it needed. And I'm so glad Disney, Marvel, everyone involved understood that with this one. I was so immersed in this world. I didn't want to leave. This movie's world building is so fantastic, so incredible. There are so many beautiful visuals that just give you a sense of Namor's world, the underwater world, the beautiful world building there, a great addition to the MCU. I loved all that stuff. I loved seeing his culture, his society, and I loved seeing that parallel to the Wakandan society and their culture. And I thought this film did a great job at not only visually showing that, but writing it in. But however, those visuals of that beautiful underwater landscape next to the beautiful on land areas of Wakanda. It made for such great visual storytelling. You're able to get a lot of information very quick by just some great, awesome wides that establish the world. And it tells you more than just pretty sights. It tells you a lot about the history, the characters, and everything involved. And that's what I love about detailed filmmaking. That's why the world building in this movie is so good. And furthermore, the runtime adds to the emotion. A lot of the time dedicated to characters is dedicated to building emotion. It's not for the sake of just making a long movie. Thank God. Talk about the filmmaking too. Ryan Coogler crafts worlds that are just so engrossing and characters so empathetic and stories that are so palpable that you're able to really latch onto each character and understand where they're coming from. And that's such an important element I think comic books and stories should have about the heroes and villains is, yeah, well, some people are just bad for the sake of being bad. That's not always the case. At the end of the day, sometimes we're all just that small bitty human that's struggling to survive and protect our way of life. What happens when even if a decision by someone else is made from their goodwill, what if that decision affects our home world? What if it affects the people around us and our families? Do we still forgive them for that? Do we still understand where they're coming from, or do we feel threatened? And I love the questions this movie ponders about that. Back to the fact that Ryan Coogler is just freaking awesome. And the music, man, the music in this movie got me emotional and swelled up on multiple occasions, and I was just some of the best music in any Marvel movie I've seen, and some of the best music I've heard this year. This is some of the best visuals Marvel has had in the MCU, and I'm so relieved to say that. I'm really happy the fact that they took their time to refine everything. The effects are fantastic. The movie looks amazing. In terms of really things that took me out for action, it would have to be the editing. I thought the visuals were there, I thought the spectacle was there, I thought the choreography was there. Sometimes the movie gets a little cutty. Sometimes we get some moments where like you could be really enjoying a great, awesome choreographed sequence, and it feels like the movie wants to do a little too much camera cutting, and I could have used a little more focused up fighting there. It's not always throughout the movie, it's not everywhere, but it was something really prevalent in the third act that did admittedly take away some emotion for me. I was still able to feel all the beats, but I wanted to breathe with a certain character interaction a little more, and during the third act, it felt like it was cross-cutting away to other stuff that I could have used without. However, given that I cared about everyone involved, it didn't ruin the movie for me. And that's what happens when you make a film that you care about everyone, you take everything seriously, you understand the stakes, and you understand the weight of what's going on. That way the movie doesn't come across like a series of unfunny PG-13 SNL skits stitched together to make a movie. What was I saying? At the end of the day, I really love this movie. Black Panther Wakanda Forever delivers in so many ways. Has some choppiness towards the third act. I thought I could have used a little more focus there. Too much cross-cutting, and it took away from some of the emotional oomph that the conclusion could have had. However, with that being said, I ultimately think the film still wraps up so satisfyingly, and it's so emotionally engrossing, and I do think this film is so respectful with what it wanted to do for Chadwick Boseman. I'm really curious to see what other people are going to think about it. They do a lot of stuff in this film. They do a lot of different things, but I gotta say, it's some of the strongest of Phase 4, and I just genuinely like this movie. Call me a shill, call me what you want. Even with my flaws, I can still love a movie because that is how this works. Thank you so much, guys, for watching this. This is a little longer. I love talking about movies. I love talking about Marvel. I love talking about DC. A lot of crazy stuff going on right now. I just wanted to say also thank you for your patience. Thank you for watching these reviews, Scatterbrain reviews. I appreciate you. Please like and subscribe. I'm Justin. John wasn't able to see this one with me, but he'll be back around at some point. He's alive somewhere. Thank you so much. Please watch what else we got going on. Appreciate it. Wakanda Forever.